Greetings, this is Brother Eli with another episode of Bible Truth Revealed. Today's teaching is entitled, Is it wrong to commit suicide? That is it wrong to commit suicide? On www.cdc.gov, which is the website of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, there is an article entitled, Facts About Suicide. It says this: suicide was responsible for 48,183 deaths in 2021, which is about one death every 11 minutes. So one person committed suicide every 11 minutes in 2021 in the USA. The number of people who think about or attempt suicide is even higher. In 2021, an estimated 12.3 million American adults seriously thought about suicide. So they seriously wanted to kill themselves. 3.5 million planned a suicide attempt, and 1.7 million attempted suicide. And this is only in 2021. These numbers are staggering, and they prove that suicide is a very real problem that plagues our society. Therefore, it must be taken very seriously by all of us. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines the word suicide as the act or an instance of taking one's own life voluntarily and intentionally. So the question is it wrong for someone to take his or her own life voluntarily and intentionally? Wisdom of Solomon chapter 1 verse 12. This is the Wisdom of Solomon chapter 1 verse 12 in the Apocrypha of the Brenton Septuagint translation. It reads thus: Seek not death in the error of your life. Again, seek not death in the error of your life. So if you make a mistake in life, don't go seeking death. Many people voluntarily and intentionally take their own lives because they made a mistake that they think they cannot recover from. They are so embarrassed and ashamed because of an error, because of something that they did, that they decide to take their own life voluntarily and intentionally. And we are learning that we are not supposed to seek death in the era of our life. It continues, and pull not upon yourselves destruction with the works of your hands. Do not cause destruction to yourself by your own hands. Do not commit suicide. Even though life can be very difficult at times, we all make mistakes and we may suffer in a way that we find almost impossible to bear. But suicide is not the answer. Ecclesiasticus chapter 30, I will read verses 17 and 21 to 23. Ecclesiasticus chapter 30 is Sirach chapter 30 in the Apocrypha, and I'm reading verses 17 and 21 to 23. It says, Death is better than a bitter life or continual sickness. Death is better than a bitter life or continual sickness. No one wants to live a bitter life or to be constantly sick. For this reason, people who are experiencing great suffering often wish to die. That is one sure way to end the suffering. However, this verse is not giving us permission to commit suicide when things get tough. It is demonstrating that it is understandable for some people to have thoughts of suicide when they're at their lowest point. However, it goes on to tell us how we should respond when we have suicidal thoughts. Verse 21. Give not over thy mind to heaviness. Don't allow all these heavy thoughts to take over your mind. And afflict not thyself in thine own counsel. Don't beat yourself up with negative words. Don't allow negativity to take over. The gladness of the heart is the life of man, and the joyfulness of a man prolongeth his days. So we are supposed to seek gladness and joyfulness. When we are happy, we want to keep living. But if we allow negativity, thoughts of suicide, deep depression to take over, that is when we desire to die. Verse 23, love thine own soul. Love yourself enough not to kill yourself, and comfort thy heart. Remove sorrow far from thee. When sorrowful thoughts come to your mind, do what it takes to remove them. Do not entertain them, for sorrow has killed many, and there is no profit therein. The Most High does not want us to take on these sorrowful thoughts, thoughts of negativity, depression, thoughts of suicide, because suicide is not the answer. He does not want us to kill ourselves. We must seek joyfulness and comfort rather than afflicting ourselves with thoughts of death. There are helplines that we can call if we are dealing with suicidal thoughts. They have professionals who are trained to help people who are experiencing deep depression, who are dealing with suicidal thoughts. And many people have been persuaded not to take their lives by someone who's trained in doing exactly this. When you understand that the Most High wants you to live and not die, but you are having thoughts of death, it's in your best interest to get the help that you can. So if you're having suicidal thoughts, call your local suicide helpline and accept the help that they will offer. In the New World Encyclopedia, under the heading Suicide, it lists a number of reasons and causes for suicide. I will address the following 7 reasons and causes in this teaching. 1. Pain, physical or emotional agony that is not correctable. 2. Stress, grief after the death of someone close. 3. Crime, escaping judicial punishment and dehumanization. Boredom of incarceration. Next is mental illness and disability, depression, bipolar disorder, trauma and schizophrenia. Then we have catastrophic injury, paralysis, disfigurement, loss of limb. Then adverse environment, sexual abuse, poverty, homelessness, discrimination, bullying, fear of murder and or torture. And finally, number 7, financial loss, gambling addiction, loss of job or assets, stock market crash, debts. These are all reasons why people have suicidal thoughts, and many people end up taking their own lives. Let's examine each of these reasons and causes in turn and learn what the Holy Scriptures have to say about them. This will help us to see how our forefathers dealt with depression and suicidal thoughts. Sometimes they took their own lives, and other times they overcame their difficulties and went on to lead very fruitful lives. But the righteous ones always sought permission from the Most High when they felt that it was better to die than to live. Number 1, pain. Physical or emotional agony that is not correctable. Jonah chapter 4, verses 3 to 4 and 8 to 9. That's Jonah chapter 4, verses 3 to 4 and 8 to 9. It says, "And now, Almighty Creator, take my life from me, for it is better for me to die than to live." Jonah was experiencing so much emotional agony that he asked the Most High to take his life. It continues, "And the Most High said to Jonah, Art thou very much grieved?" The Most High acknowledged that Jonah was grieving. He is not ignorant of our struggles. Nevertheless, emotional agony was not enough reason for the Most High to take Jonah's life. He wanted Jonah to live and not die. In fact, he taught him a very important lesson. Verse 8, "And it came to pass at the rising of the sun, that the Most High commanded a burning east wind, and the sun smote on the head of Jonah, and he fainted and despaired of his life, and said, It is better for me to die than to live." So the Most High showed Jonah, as much as you were grieved, you can actually handle more. The Most High caused the sun to smite him so that he fainted and he desired to die even more. Verse 9, "And the Most High said to Jonah, Art thou very much grieved for the God? And he said, I am very much grieved, even to death." So Jonah was a righteous man that was experiencing so much emotional agony that he wanted to die. Yet he did not take his own life. He understood that his life was not his to take. Only the Most High could authorize that. Yet the Most High did not take Jonah's life because he wanted Jonah to live and not die. 3 Kings chapter 19 verses 3 to 4. 3 Kings in the Brenton Septuagint translation is 1 Kings in the KJV. So I'm reading 3 Kings chapter 19 verses 3 to 4 in the Brenton Septuagint translation. It says, "And Elijah feared and rose and departed for his life. And he comes to Beersheba, to the land of Judah, and he left his servant there. And he himself went a day's journey in the wilderness, and came and sat under a juniper tree, and asked concerning his life, that he might die." Elijah the prophet was a righteous man that was running for his life. The wicked Queen Jezebel had threatened to kill him, and he was so distressed that he wanted the Most High to take his life. It continues, "And said, Let it be enough now, O Most High. Take, I pray thee, my life from me, for I am no better than my fathers." Yet the Most High did not take Elijah's life because he wanted Elijah to live and not die. If you are dealing with unbearable physical pain or emotional agony, it is perfectly fine to ask the Most High to take your life. But it is not okay to take your own life. There's a very good chance that the Most High wants you to live and not die. But the choice is his and not yours. Stress, grief after the death of someone close. Ecclesiasticus chapter 38 is Sirach chapter 38 in the Apocrypha, and I'm reading verses 16 to 18 and verse 23. That's Ecclesiasticus chapter 38, verses 16 to 18 and verse 23, and it reads thus: My son, let tears fall down over the dead. So it's okay to cry for your dead loved ones and begin to lament as if thou hast suffered great harm thyself. Let it all out. Don't be stoic and hold it in. Let the grief out. And then cover his body according to the custom, and neglect not his burial. So we bury our dead. Weep bitterly and make great moan. Let it out. If you don't let it out, that's when you want to die yourself. Weep, cry, let it out, and use lamentation as he is worthy, and that a day or two, lest thou be evil spoken of. Because sometimes we want to cry, but we hold it in, and then people think, what, does this person not have any emotions? Why is he not crying? His mother died. His grandmother died. Why is he not letting it out? Let it out, lest thou be evil spoken of. And then comfort thyself for thy heaviness. For of heaviness cometh death, and the heaviness of the heart breaketh strength. So let it out, and then comfort yourself. If you don't let it out, you can desire to die. That grief can actually kill you. People can die from grief. So let it out. For of heaviness cometh death. Many people have committed suicide following the death of a loved one. Many people have died of grief. The scriptures make it clear that we are allowed to weep and make great mourning, but we are not supposed to take our own lives. Only the Most High can authorize something like that, and He has not given us permission to take our own lives because of stress or grief. Verse 23. When the dead is at rest, let his remembrance rest, and be comforted for him when his spirit is departed from him. We are supposed to be comforted when our loved ones pass away. First we grieve, we get rid of the heaviness, then we become comforted because now they are at rest. They're no longer suffering. They are at rest. Next we have crime, escaping judicial punishment and dehumanization, boredom of incarceration. Judges chapter 16 verses 26 to 30. Judges chapter 16 verses 26 to 30 tells us the story of Samson. He was incarcerated and dehumanized, and he ended up committing suicide. It says, And Samson said to the young man that held his hand, Suffer me to feel the pillars on which the house rests, and I will stay myself upon them. So he asked the young man to lead him to the pillars, so he could rest on them, because he himself was blind, he couldn't see. And the house was full of men and women, and there were all the chiefs of the Philistines. All the chiefs, the rulers, the leaders of the Philistines were in this banquet, and on the roof were about 3,000 men and women looking at the sports of Samson. They were mocking Samson. They were making sport of Samson because Samson was their enemy. They had captured him. imprisoned him, and dehumanized him. And Samson wept before the Most High and said, O Most High, remember me, I pray thee, and strengthen me, O Most High, yet this once, and I will requite one recompense to the Philistines for my 2 eyes. The Philistines had dug out his eyes, and they had cut his hair. He had lost his superhuman strength. So he's asking the Most High to strengthen him just one more time, so he could exact vengeance on the Philistines. And Samson took hold of the 2 pillars of the house on which the house stood, and leaned on them, and laid hold of one with his right hand, and the other with his left. And Samson said, Let my life perish with the Philistines. And he bowed himself mightily, and the house fell upon the princes, and upon all the people that were in it. And the dead whom Samson slew in his death were more than those whom he slew in his life. So he asked the Most High to restore his strength one last time, that he could die with the Philistines. Samson's mission in life was to destroy the Philistines, and by sacrificing his life, he killed more Philistines than he had done in his entire lifetime. This is an exceptional circumstance that does not apply to us today. So we cannot use the example of Samson to justify committing suicide today. Next is mental illness and disability, depression, bipolar disorder, trauma, and schizophrenia. Ecclesiastes chapter 1 verses 14 to 15. Ecclesiastes chapter 1 verses 14 to 15 reads thus: I beheld all the works that were wrought under the sun, and behold, all were vanity and waywardness of spirit. That which is crooked cannot be made straight, and deficiency cannot be numbered. These are the words of someone who is depressed. Everything seems pointless and hopeless. All is vanity. The crooked cannot be made straight, and there's so much deficiency that it cannot be numbered. This is what it feels like when someone is suffering from depression. They see all hopelessness and negativity and vanity. Ecclesiastes chapter 2 verse 17. Ecclesiastes chapter 2 verse 17 says, So I hated life, because the work that was wrought under the sun was evil before me, for all is vanity and waywardness of spirit. King Solomon was the wisest man that ever lived. Yet he suffered from depression, and he hated life. Ecclesiastes chapter 4 verses 1 to 3. Ecclesiastes chapter 4 verses 1 to 3 says, So I returned and saw all the oppressions that were done under the sun, and behold the tear of the oppressed, and they had no comforter. And on the side of them that oppressed them was power, but they had no comforter. And I praised all the dead that had already died, more than the living, as many as are alive until now. Many times when people are suffering from deep depression, they envy the dead. They wish that they themselves were dead. Verse 3. Better also than both these is he who has not yet been, who has not seen all the evil work that is done under the sun. People who are suffering from deep depression often have a strong desire to die because life seems hopeless. Yet we must never forget that the Most High gave us the gift of life, and only He should take away this precious gift. Taking our own life is like throwing this gift back into the face of the Most High, and that is ungratefulness. The prophet Jeremiah also suffered from depression, but he understood that only the Most High could take his life, so suicide was not an option. We can read about this in Jeremiah chapter 20, verses 14 to 15 and verse 18. That's Jeremiah chapter 20, verses 14 to 15 and verse 18. It reads thus: Cursed be the day wherein I was born. So he is regretting the fact that he was even born. This is deep depression. The day wherein my mother brought me forth, let it not be blessed. Cursed be the man who brought the glad tidings to my father, saying, A male child is born to thee. Verse 18. Why is it that I came forth of the womb to see troubles and distresses, and my days are spent in shame? Jeremiah was so depressed that he became known as a weeping prophet. He was constantly crying because of his suffering. Yet he did not commit suicide because he understood that the Most High wanted him to live. He had a great work to do, and he couldn't have completed his mission if he had committed suicide. So rather than taking our lives when we are at our lowest point, we need to ask the Most High for the strength to go on and fulfill our mission in life. The next reason or cause for suicide is catastrophic injury, paralysis, disfigurement, loss of limb. Judges chapter 9 verses 51 to 54. Judges chapter 9 verses 51 to 54 reads thus: And there was a strong tower in the midst of the city, and thither all the men and the women of the city fled, and shut the door without them, and went up on the roof of the tower. And Abimelech drew near to the tower, and they besieged it. And Abimelech drew near to the door of the tower to burn it with fire. So his intention was to kill all these people who had fled to the tower by burning the tower with fire. Verse 53. And a woman cast a piece of a millstone upon the head of Abimelech and broke his skull. This is a catastrophic injury. And he cried out quickly to the young man, his armor-bearer, and said to him, Draw thy sword and slay me, lest at any time they should say, A woman slew him. And his young man thrust him through, and he died. So Abimelech's skull was broken, and he was ashamed that he had been defeated by a woman. For this reason, he gave his armor-bearer instructions to kill him. Notice, he did not ask the Most High to take his life. Rather, he chose to commit suicide. This is not a righteous example for us to follow. Compare the difference between Abimelech's behavior and that of righteous men such as Jonah Elijah, and Jeremiah. Let us be like our righteous forefathers rather than the unrighteous ones. Our righteous forefathers, when they felt like they wanted to die, they asked the Most High to take their lives, and they let Him make that decision. The unrighteous ones simply went ahead and committed suicide. The next reason is adverse environment, sexual abuse, poverty, homelessness, discrimination, bullying, fear of murder and or torture. So I'll discuss fear of murder and or torture as found in 1 Kings chapter 31 in the Septuagint, which is 1 Samuel chapter 31 in the KJV. So I'm reading 1 Kings chapter 31 verses 1 to 6 in the Septuagint. It says, "And the Philistines fought with Israel, and the men of Israel fled from before the Philistines, and they fall down wounded in the mountain of Gelbwe." So the Israelites were losing the battle against the Philistines. "And the Philistines pressed closely on Saul and his sons, and the Philistines smite Jonathan and Abinadab and Melchizedek, son of Saul." So Saul was seeing his sons put to death by his enemies, the Philistines. And the battle prevails against Saul, and the shooters with arrows, even the archers find him, and he was wounded under the ribs. So Saul was shot. And Saul said to his armor-bearer, "Draw thy sword, and pierce me through with it, lest these uncircumcised come, and pierce me through, and mock me." But his armor-bearer would not, for he feared greatly. So Saul took his sword and fell upon it. Saul committed suicide. And his armor-bearer saw that Saul was dead, and he fell also himself upon his sword and died with him. So Saul died, and his 3 sons, and his armor-bearer in that day together. King Saul was afraid of being tortured, mocked, and killed by his enemies. Therefore, he decided to take his own life. The Most High had already stopped responding to him, and he had already been told by the prophet Samuel that he and his sons would die in battle. This is why he didn't bother asking the Most High what he should do. He knew that death was inevitable, so he simply decided to commit suicide. This is not a good example for us to follow, because King Saul was not a righteous man. Finally, the 7th reason for people committing suicide is financial loss, gambling addiction, loss of job or assets, stock market crash, debts. Let's read Job chapter 1, verses 1 to 3 and verse 22. That's Job chapter 1, verses 1 to 3 and verse 22. It says, "There was a certain man in the land of Uzzi's whose name was Job. And that man was true, blameless, righteous, and godly, abstaining from everything evil." This is the way that we are supposed to be. Now we are going to learn that Job suffered more than any of us has suffered, and probably more than any of us will ever suffer. But Job was a true, blameless, righteous, and godly man, abstaining from everything evil. If Job thought that committing suicide was the right thing to do, that's exactly what we should expect him to do. But if Job understood understood that he must not take his own life, then that would explain why he abstained from committing suicide. Verse 2, and he had 7 sons and 3 daughters, and his cattle consisted of 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 she-asses in the pastures, and a very great household. And he had a great husbandry on the earth. And that man was most noble of the men of the east. So Job was filthy rich. The story of Job is very well known. If you read the rest of the chapter, you will discover that he lost all his wealth in one day. This is enough to make most people at least consider committing suicide. Verse 22 says, in all these events that befell him, Job sinned not at all before the Most High, and did not impute folly to the Most High. So even though he lost everything he had, including his own children, Job refused to sin. He abstained from evil. Job is a righteous example of how we should respond in the face of financial ruin. As long as we have the Most High, there is always hope. Things can and will get better. Job chapter 2, verses 9 and 10. Job chapter 2, verses 9 and 10 reads thus. And when much time had passed, his wife said to him, how long wilt thou hold out, saying, behold, I wait yet a little while, expecting the hope of my deliverance? Because this is what Job was saying. I'm waiting for the Most High to deliver me. Job could have said, yep, I'm out of here. I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to commit suicide. But no, Job had hope. Even when things seem hopeless, we can expect the hope of our deliverance, because the Most High is the one that delivers his people. It continues, for behold, thy memorial is abolished from the earth, even thy sons and daughters, the pangs and pains of my womb, which I bore in vain with sorrows. And thou thyself sittest down to spend the nights in the open air among the corruption of worms. That's how sad his case was. He sat outside with worms. And I am a wanderer and a servant from place to place and house to house, waiting for the setting of the sun, that I may rest from my labors and my pangs which now beset me. So his wife went from being the wife of the richest man in the east to working hard and waiting for the sun to set just so she can get a break. She continues, but say some word against the Most High and die. She wanted Job to curse the Most High so that he could die. But he looked on her and said to her, thou hast spoken like one of the foolish women. Because Job knew it would be a foolish thing to commit suicide. Job abstained from all evil. If he wanted the Most High to take his life, he would simply ask the Most High to take his life, just like Jonah did, Elijah did. But here she's saying, say something against the Most High. Curse the Most High to force him to kill you. That was speaking like a foolish woman. Job continued, if we have received good things of the hand of the Most High, shall we not endure evil things? We have all received good things from the Most High. When we're in a state of depression, it would do us well to count our blessings. There has to be something good you can focus on to take your mind off the evil things. But Job went even further and said, if we've received good things of the hand of the Most High, shall we not enjoy evil things? So take the good, take the evil, endure, but do not put yourself to death. That is not what the Most High wants us to do. He wants us to endure. He wants us to expect the hope of our deliverance, just like Job did. This is why the Most High said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job, that there is no man like him in all the earth? This is a good example. It continues. In all these things that happened to him, Job sinned not at all with his lips before the Most High. This is the attitude that we should have when things seem to be going from bad to worse. Suicide was not an option for Job, and it should not be an option for us either. None of us has lost as much as Job lost. So none of us can justify taking our own lives when Job refused to even consider suicide. The Most High wants his righteous people to live and not die. He has a purpose for our lives. So even if we are depressed enough to ask him to take our lives, we must not take it upon ourselves to commit suicide. In conclusion, the Most High does not want us to commit suicide. If you are suffering from serious depression or you have thoughts of committing suicide, please contact your local suicide helpline so you can get the help that you need. You can also seek comfort in the Psalms of David, such as Psalm chapter 117. Psalm 117 in the Septuagint is Psalm chapter 118 in the KJV, and I'm going to read verses 17 to 18. Psalm 117 verses 17 to 18 reads thus: I shall not die, but live. Again, I shall not die, but live and recount the works of the Most High. The Most High has chastened me sore, but he has not given me up to death. The Most High chastens or punishes us from time to time, but he has not given us up to death. Therefore, rather than planning to commit suicide, let us live and recount the wonderful works of the Most High. And with that I say, Salam.